And so our third and final speaker is Jeffrey Caruso, who is the founding executive director of the Virginia Catholic Conference, which, as you know from what Bishop said this morning, was created to advance the public policy interests of the Commonwealth's two Catholic bishops in the Diocese of Richmond and the Diocese of Arlington. Jeff is originally from Maryland, but he got to Virginia as quickly as he could. He spent 2 years practicing law in his native state, and then more than 6 years as one of the associate directors at the Maryland Catholic Conference. In January of 2005, Jeff became the first executive director of our Virginia Catholic Conference and opened its offices in Richmond. He currently serves on the Catholic Charities USA Social Policy Committee and the Catholic Virginian Board, and he has just completed a term as a consultant to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Subcommittee for the Promotion of the Defense of Marriage. Mr. Caruso graduated from the Pennsylvania State University in 1993 with a BS in Mathematics and Psychology, and then from the Notre Dame Law School in 1996. He and his family reside in the southern tip of the diocese in Fredericksburg, and they belong to St. Mary of the Immaculate Conception Catholic Church. Please join me in welcoming our friend in Richmond, Jeff Caruso.
Well, thank you, Amy, for the kind introduction. And I want to start out with just a very, very special thanks to the Office of Marriage, Family, and Respect Life, Amy and Therese and the entire team. Let's take a moment for a round of applause. Very challenging circumstances this year, and yet a wonderful crowd. It takes so much work to put on one of these events, and what an amazing job, an amazing event. So thank you. It's really a wonderful partnership that we have with these two organizations represented here, the Family Foundation and VSHL. We've partnered with them the last 2 years on the State March for Life, as well as many of the issues that you've heard about already, all the ones relating to abortion, as well as the assisted suicide issue. So it's really, really great to be collaborating with partners, and it's so important to have these coalitions and partnerships in Virginia. I'll also make a plug for Notre Dame, since that was mentioned in my intro. They are playing at 2:30 against Duke, so just saying, please tune in. And then also, Victoria made some comments in her presentation that kind of reminded me about a somewhat similar path that I took to advocacy. So I wanted not to digress too much, but I wanted to start off with that. So when I was in college, I started out wanting to be an actuary. And I think probably most of you know what an actuary is. I always get some questions about what that is, but if you don't know what an actuary is, see me later and I can explain. But that's what I originally wanted to be when I started college. Then I shifted to an interest in psychology, and then after I got done with the whole college experience, I decided to go to law school. Then I practiced law for 2 years, and then I figured out that I wanted to do the advocacy. And why do I mention all this? I just want to show how much smarter Victoria is than I am, because she figured it out in the 6th grade, all right? And it took me until I was in my late 20s, and lots of student loan debt, probably more than she had heaped up in there. So I just say that to congratulations to Victoria for figuring it out at such an early age. And maybe if I had that same teacher and that same course, and maybe if I'd written that paper and gone on that field trip, maybe I would have gotten into advocacy sooner than I did. But in any event, it's wonderful to be in the advocacy realm and participating in advocacy on these very important fundamental issues. The issue that I'm here to talk about is religious liberty, and religious liberty, of course, is closely tied into these issues of life and family that we've been hearing about, because in order for you to be able to practice your beliefs on life and family, you need religious liberty. So that's what I'm going to be addressing here today. I'm going to start out with a look back at the 2020 session and a few religious liberty issues, then go into what we foresee in 2021, the 2021 General Assembly session, and then end with an action item. So the 2020 session, two kind of big buckets, if you will, of religious liberty issues. One would be health mandates, and then secondly would be SOGI legislation, and I'll get into what that is in a minute. But when health mandates, I mean, I think the issue that everybody's probably the most familiar with is the one that we've been hearing about for the last decade at the federal level, which is the contraceptive mandate, and then that in turn led to the Little Sisters of the Poor case, which finally got resolved at the U.S. Supreme Court a couple months ago, with the Little Sisters prevailing after a long legal battle. So that's just kind of an example federally. Well, we deal with the same things at the state level. There are efforts to force health insurance plans to cover morally objectionable items and procedures at the state level as well. So Olivia talked a little bit about the work group that they formed to the so-called reproductive services health work group that we've all been tuning into, and that I think is going to continue to show itself over the next few months as we get into the 2021 session. But there actually was one health mandate that passed in the 2020 session, and that is a bill that would require, or it does require, health plans to cover gender reassignment surgeries and procedures. So that was something that we opposed, but unfortunately it passed. And the religious liberty arguments that we made were not successful in getting any sort of exemption added to the bill. But that's something just to say that there have been some health mandate bills considered already. One has passed. Others we see will be continued to be debated in the 2021 session. And then also the whole area of SOGI legislation. So what is SOGI? S-O-G-I. SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity. So that's kind of a shorthand. And then what is SOGI non-discrimination legislation? Well, it's basically, it seeks to add the terms sexual orientation and gender identity as criteria against which entities cannot discriminate. So we dealt with a whole host of SOGI non-discrimination bills during the 2020 session. What concerns us about SOGI non-discrimination legislation? To start out, it's important to note that the Catechism says that the Church opposes all unjust discrimination. So we certainly do oppose all unjust discrimination, but it's just and it's essential to be able to follow our religious beliefs based on a correctly formed conscience. So the problem becomes that sometimes courts interpret the terms sexual orientation and gender identity within non-discrimination laws very, very broadly. So broadly that they would prohibit religious organizations from acting according to their beliefs, like the ones that we hold about marriage and human sexuality. So that's really kind of the conundrum, if you will, is that sexual orientation and gender identity doesn't even mean just orientation, but depending on how courts interpret these, they can be interpreted very broadly to get into the area of religious belief and preventing people from being able to, follow the law on the one hand and practice their religious beliefs at the same time on the other hand. So it becomes a matter for court interpretation. And then it becomes discrimination simply to make decisions that are consistent with your beliefs, again, depending on how a court interprets these. So religious employers and churches and schools and other ministries, of course, have a right and a duty to practice their beliefs, including the belief that God created each person as male or female and established marriage as the union of a man and a woman. So that's really what the debate is all about for us, is being able to practice these beliefs about marriage and human sexuality. In the past, these SOGI non-discrimination bills were defeated at the General Assembly each year. I began at the Virginia Catholic Conference in 2005, and in each year since then, up until the 2020 session, SOGI legislation was defeated. But unfortunately, it did pass in the 2020 session, and it passed without the types of religious liberty protections that we were seeking to add to these bills. So in areas such as employment and public accommodation and housing, these new criteria of sexual orientation and gender identity are a part of Virginia's non-discrimination laws. And again, the amendments that we sought to try to ensure appropriate religious liberty protections were really just thwarted at every turn. So that was 2020. Now, shifting to 2021, how are these health mandates and SOGI issues going to potentially play out in 2021? Well, again, in the health mandates arena, we're closely following this reproductive health services working group that was formed by a House committee. They had one meeting during the summer. We're anticipating they may have at least one other meeting before the 2021 session. That may be an opportunity for some people to have an opportunity to weigh in, so we'll keep people informed. But depending on the outcome of that work group, we're probably somewhat likely to see health mandate legislation in some form in the 2021 session. And one form, and the worst of all possible forms that could take, would be that it could be legislation to require health plans to cover contraception, sterilizations, and even abortion. So it's something that we're very much keeping an eye on and being vigilant about, and looking for opportunities, not only for our organizations to participate, because they hear from us all the time, but to get other newer voices to participate in these debates. One thing that was mentioned is that during the special session that's currently ongoing at the Virginia General Assembly, they've shifted to virtual committee hearings. And while that's somewhat of a disadvantage for lobbyists, in another respect, it can be an advantage for people who live further away and want to participate in the committee process, because what we used to have to do is watch for committee hearings. You don't get a lot of advance notice. You might know the night before when a committee hearing is going to be the next morning during the General Assembly session. And then it was very hard to try to get people who live far away to come to Richmond and sit in a committee either all morning or all afternoon to testify for 2 minutes. But with these virtual processes, if they continue, on the one hand, that is kind of disappointing for public participation. But on the other hand, it can be an opportunity for people who live farther away from Richmond, such as in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Southwest Virginia, to sign up to get into a Zoom meeting and participate in a committee hearing, namely to testify for or against a piece of legislation. So there's a lot of opportunities for public participation from across the state. that maybe weren't available when committees were all in person. And again, I hope they go back to being in person. I think it's much better for meaningful public input that way. But just know that there might be this virtual opportunity come January for people that live a couple hours away from Richmond to be able to sign up for committee hearings. So we'll keep you posted on that. But that's what might be on tap with health mandates in the 2021 session. SOGI legislation, we think that's coming back in the 2021 session as well. One way that we think that might come back is in the area of adoption and foster care. So on that, I'm going to kind of trace back to a debate that we've been involved in for about the last decade on adoption and foster care, and that is the conscience law. And it's a conscience law we currently have in Virginia. So back during the 2012 General Assembly session, much different period of time, much different composition of the General Assembly, working with the Family Foundation and other groups, we were able to get a bill passed that says that a faith-based adoption agency can serve vulnerable children and families and follow their faith, such as their beliefs about marriage. So it protected the conscience rights of faith-based adoption agencies. Specifically, the bill says that a child placing agency, I'm going to use the term child placing because that means both adoption and foster care, okay? So a child placing agency cannot be required to participate in a placement that would violate their religious or moral beliefs. An agency cannot be denied a license because they do not participate in these placements. They cannot be denied a grant, a contract, or an opportunity to participate in programs by the government because they do not participate in placements that violate their beliefs. And they can't be sued because they don't participate in placements that violate their beliefs. So, as you know, Catholic charities and some other faith-based charities believe that marriage is the union of a man and a woman, and they seek to practice that belief within the services they provide. So that's really kind of the need and the importance of the conscience law that we have in place. We were the second state in the country to adopt this conscience law. And currently, I think there's 10 states that have the conscience law, but it's the subject of litigation in one state, and then in another state that doesn't have a conscience law, there's also some litigation that stemmed from the city of Philadelphia, and that has bubbled up to the Supreme Court. So we think there's going to be a Supreme Court decision about the adoption and foster care space and conscience rights within that sometime next year, perhaps in June of next year. There might be a U.S. Supreme Court decision on that. So again, that speaks to the importance of who serves in our judiciary. Judges are very important in terms of protecting not only life but also religious liberty. Yes, this issue is winding its way through the courts, but also we think there's going to be legislation during the 2021 session that's going to try to repeal the good and very important conscience law that we have on the books now. We saw the bill in 2020. Fortunately, it was defeated in committee. We were very impressed with the number of parents and adoptive parents and others that operate in the adoption and foster care space did a great job of mobilizing, getting people to several hearings during the 2020 session, and a bill that sought to repeal the adoption and foster care conscience law was defeated in committee, and in a bipartisan way, and legislators recognize the great work that faith-based agencies do. They recognize that prospective adoptive parents and birth moms want choices, and including the choice of being able to work with a faith-based agency. And that debate turned out our way in 2020, but it's not over. It's coming back in the 2021 session, and we need all hands on deck to continue to protect that conscience law. Because we need all hands on deck in the adoption and foster care space. Some birth moms, some prospective adoptive parents, specifically seek out a faith-based agency because that agency shares their values. And an argument that we will continue to make is it's important for everybody to be able to participate in serving vulnerable children and families, and faith-based agencies have a critical role to play, as well as people who go to those faith-based agencies specifically because they share those beliefs. So the foster care issue in particular is one where we really need all hands on deck. We don't need less providers. We need more. We need more providers and more options and more choices. So that's going to be a really important debate during the 2021 session. There have been some states that have gone in the opposite direction from a conscience law. So we're one of 10 that has the good conscience protection. There are some states that not only don't have a conscience protection, but the state has actually said that if you discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, which as applied in this context would mean if you don't adhere to the belief that marriage is the union of a man and a woman when you provide your services, then you can't participate in the adoption and foster care space. And that has meant in states such as Massachusetts and Illinois, and also in the District of Columbia, and that has meant that Catholic Charities in some of those places have had to stop providing adoptions. So, we certainly want to protect the ability of faith-based adoption agencies to perform their vital work here in Virginia. We certainly have a strong case to make. It's a case that resonated during the 2020 session, but it's a case that we're going to have to continue to make even stronger during the 2021 session. So that leads to an opportunity. You've heard opportunities already to engage in advocacy, and I encourage you to take advantage of each one of those. But also in terms of the Virginia Catholic Conference Network, I'm going to give you the tech and the non-tech way to sign up for the Virginia Catholic Conference Network. Well, first of all, how many people are already in? How many people receive our regular email alerts? Okay, great. Looks like about half of you. For the other half of you, we'd love to have you in. We need all the participation we can get. The first way to sign up is through text. So if you want to sign up through a text message, what you want to do is text 50457, and what you want to text VCC to 50457. So VCC standing for Virginia Catholic Conference, and it doesn't matter whether it's all caps or not, but it's not case sensitive. But VCC, and the number again is 50457. So text VCC to 50457. If you do that, you're going to receive a link, and then you just click on the link and you type in your name, your address, your email, and then that's it. You'll be signed up for our alert network. You'll get regular alerts and updates from us. The other way to sign up, I think most of you have a Virginia Catholic Conference brochure on your tables. There is a tear-off form on the back of the brochure. So if you would like to sign up that way, just fill out the tear-off form and give that to me at the end, and I'll take that back to the office and we'll get you enrolled. So either way, we hope you'll participate. just one example of why it's so important to advocate, and this kind of ties back into the assisted suicide issue that Olivia mentioned. So a couple years ago, there was a study, a 2-year study by a joint commission of the General Assembly. And it was a study on the issue of Virginia's current ban on assisted suicide. And they were looking at should Virginia continue the ban on assisted suicide, or should they move in the direction of states like California and Colorado that have legalized assisted suicide. So studied the issue for 2 years, and it culminated in a public comment period. During the comment period, advocates against assisted suicide outnumbered advocates for assisted suicide by an 8-to-1 margin when they submitted comments on the electronic platform that the Virginia General Assembly Commission provided. By an 8-to-1 margin, that is. And why was that? Well, it was because the Virginia Catholic Conference and VSHL and the Family Foundation were all urging people to weigh in with their comments before the commission decided this. So thanks to emails, or public comments, I should say, that many of you submitted after seeing that on our network or on the network of our partnering organizations, thanks to that input, the commission heard loud and clear that Virginians don't want to change the ban on assisted suicide. And that was the decision that the commission in turn made. They made the decision to keep Virginia's law as is. Now again, that was a different time and place. We have a new composition of the General Assembly, so we do expect that issue to continue to ramp up and to be a threat in the future. It's been a threat in Maryland, I know. The Maryland General Assembly has considered it for a number of years now. So it's something that has come to our region, and it's something that's going to be very important for us to continue to advocate against. But I just cite that as a really, really good example of why it's so important to weigh in and participate. So I'm done with the infomercial now, but if you would sign up for the Virginia Catholic Conference email network, we would be so grateful. That's all I have to say. I know that the next segment is for questions, so I want to be sure to allow plenty of time for that. Thank you.